Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Solution Club at the beginning of the new world, which has now merged with the conversation. So this is both the conversation and the Solution Club. And great to see everyone. We've been jamming offline for a bit. And I just want to open it up for folks to say hello and share whatever you feel like sharing as we get rolling here.
Hello and welcome. This is an exciting time to be together and to co-create and raise good vibes and be loving and kind and expansive and generous. And I'm so grateful to be with this amazing, amazing group that's raising the vibration on the planet and learning ways to create together and sharing from our hearts. And thank you all so much.
Ditto what Bridget said.
Thank you, everybody, for being together. During our break, a notebook fell off my counter. Usually this means there's something in it worthwhile, and I opened to a page that I had written on my 33rd birthday, which was this past May 18th. And it says this: to us, where is this new existence we are walking towards? What vision do we hold for ourselves as guests on this planet? What wisdom needs to come forward to overtake these dark forces of greed, manipulation, and consumerism? Back to the land, they whisper. Our ancestors have been waiting for us to awaken at this time. So much desperately depends on our willingness to change how we view one another, the earth, and the experience of being human. Back to the land, they whisper. Back to holding hands, we are one.
Incredible.
I love it.
That message was...
Oh my goodness, wonderful.
Yep, totally agree with that. Can't be more synchronistic.
I love the timing.
And where I go with it is on our way back to the land, A, we've got a lot of cleanup to do, right? And B, we need to take care of everyone so everyone can make it back, not just the wealthy, the privileged, right? And that we, enter into this new co-generative relationship with the land, right? So we plan our way back to the land very carefully and et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, love it. All right, anyone else want to say hello, chime in? All right, well, everyone, please chime in as you wish, whenever you wish. I love that it's, kind of a small group right now, and that way we can just kind of flow with each other, get into a nice rhythm. So I'll just kind of start to share maybe the beginnings of a synthesis, and I just invite everyone to add, lumps of clay to it, and, let's slap it around and shape it and have fun with it, right? And where our fingers cross, let's enjoy the experience, right? Let's not be, hey, no, this is my territory, that's mine. No, let's just co-create it as one, right? Not as 6 individuals, but one colony, right? Consisting of multiple. Anyway, so for me, the imperative at this moment is saving, healing, and transforming life on Earth as the trajectory. And it all starts with saving. So, just to use so saving, healing, and transforming. The saving is, put out the fire, get the patient, treated and with oxygen and immediate treatment and into the ambulance and off to the hospital. At the hospital begins the healing. So first there's the saving, it's fire and rescue and paramedics. Then it's healing, and that can take days, weeks, months, whatever. And then as you go out of the hospital and it's like, all right, I'm ready for the new chapter, transformation, right? Chrysalis to butterfly, etc. And so the urgent thing right now is the saving. Paradoxically, in order to be able to do that saving, we actually need to do some transforming, right? And the transformation is the foundation of it that I see is precisely what's happening right here, right now, with us coming together in profound new ways that are radically deep and, ribosomally, multidimensionally connective and regenerative, and sharing of information and resources, and really operating as one forest rather than a bunch of individual cells. And this network of conversations I see as the living, breathing, pulsing, brain tissue and connective tissue that connects us all together, that connects all the cells together, right? Thanks to Descartes and other philosophers and leaders and writers and whatever, we came to this very separate, divided, separatist, everything is separate, divisible, everything equals the sum of its parts kind of mentality. And we really saw each other as separate. I can remember in high school, I would study by myself. I would just sit down and learn, and it was just about me and the material. And especially with this mashup of the crises, the multiple overlapping and exponentially growing crises that we're confronting, and our growing awakening, right? And our hyperconnectivity through this medium, which just takes out all the BS of logistics and shaving and showering and whatever else, and you can just jump on as you are. It's just taken us to this new place of transformation where this is on an exponential growth because it's not limited by any physical resource, beyond what we're already doing as a steady state thing. Not to take that for granted that we've got electricity and internet, right? But now that we have it, this thing's going exponential, right? And that exponential is going to enable us to come right back here to the saving part, which I would say of the saving, there's really two pieces that are the most urgent. One is feeding everyone, and that's very tangible. Everybody gets it. The other is something which only a tiny fraction of humanity even knows about, much less perceives to be urgent. And that is the urgent need for solar radiation management to forcibly cool the planet by reflecting a really significant portion of sunlight back into space rather than let it be absorbed by the planet. We're talking on the order of 2 to 5%. We'd really have to do the math to see how quickly we want to cool it and whatnot. But the cooling of the planet is entirely within our control if we organize ourselves properly to do it. Meaning that we really come together as this collective, as this hive mind, and that the hive mind direct the governments of the world, right? Rather than the governments of the world directing the individuals of the world. We get rid of individualism. We come together as a hive, or a hyper-connected hive that we've been talking about all day long. And what a great conversation. Now we're putting it into action. The hive will become so intelligent that it will figure out how to get into the news, right? Something I used to do on my own or with a very small number of partners. Now we're going to do as a hive mind, right? Which is way more powerful. And once you figure out how to get into the news, you figure out how to get into people's minds. Once you're in people's minds, if I were looking at it from the old paradigm, I'd say you orchestrate. But in the new paradigm, we come together, all of us, without sacrificing any individuality, but embracing a whole new part of ourselves that had really kind of atrophied and gone to sleep, right? Which was the collective. And ever since the agricultural revolution, everything got divvied up. Prior to the agricultural revolution, we were very happy, hairy, naked, fun-loving, sex-loving creatures, just making it happen out in the jungle, beating drums, happy as can be. ever since the agricultural revolution, we've been in a self-generated hell of separatism, believing that we're all separate and each of us is just tending and toiling to our own little micro slice of the world rather than being integrated with the world. Now we're coming back to that, that wild abandoned side of me, only for you, for your eyes, that wild abandoned side of us, right? We're coming back to it, going back to the land, right? As Heather so prophetically wrote, right? And I'm also a Taurus, so I'm May 5th. My dad's May 13th. Anyway, we have
Yes,
this.
and I'm sorry to interrupt you. But to echo that, there are people on the planet that still know how we used to live, or how there are people living that way right now, right? So we have our indigenous elders, the people that are in touch with the wisdom from the planet and the stars. They are very valuable resources. They're not, population wise, not many left. So we need to look to them at this time, I believe. That they have ancient wisdom that will help us through this transition. And then I was wondering too, I mean, we talked about food and the sunlight, but what about, shelter? That we're the only species that have to pay to live in a box. The squirrels over there, they're not paying acorns to live in that tree. Like, they just simply gather some leaves and live there. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah. So, the reason that I focus on food as the most urgent thing is, number one, there is abundant shelter. Now, it's poorly distributed. I'll definitely grant you that. But shelter, it's in itself is abundant, and it's the kind of thing you build it once and then you just live under it in perpetuity. Yeah, you got to repair the roof every X number of years, whatever. But and also coupled with that, another thing that for me diminishes the urgency. It's like, if I had an option between, living in a tent with abundant food and living in a house with no food, give me the tent and the food, just, hands down. And so the real urgency is the food, right? For a whole bunch of reasons. But here's the thing. For me, it's really inseparable for the following reason. Once we get this food revolution going, right, and we're delivering food to everyone, humanity is going to experience a profound transformation, because virtually we'll all be eating at the same table and all eating the same food, the universal stew, right? And once we experience that transformation, there'll be no turning back. It's like we'll all really realize at a very deep level that we're all connected, we all need each other, and that it was just absolutely barbaric for us to not do this before. It took us a while. Hey, better late than never. I'm just, it's like being born again. It doesn't matter when it happens, it's that it happened. Well, it's time for it to happen. So when that happens, then all the other dominoes will fall in terms of shelter, housing, clothing, basic services, healthcare, recreation, access to libraries, computers, internet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All the things that, privileged folks take for granted. And it's really, as that transformation is really taking off, we'll then be able to extend this general principle of being Homo ahimsa, caretaker species, beyond just caring for our own members of our own species, right? And extend it all the way to the entire planet, where the very first urgency is to cool the planet. Because to not do so in what remains of 2020 is to put at risk our very food supply, making the whole thing about hunger and everything else completely moot as we go down a death spiral, a coaxial death spiral of planetary overheating and collapse of civilization as we go into a hungry, hot, radioactive, Mad Max violent world, right? with diseases up the kazoo and just the worst hell you can possibly imagine. We're at the precipice of that. And what's going to make the difference, again, is this magical trio, I believe, of the transformation in unity and hive mind, right? Just to give it some buzzwords that we're undergoing right now exponentially, that we're right in the middle of right now, right? Getting back to the basics, right, of saving. So saving, healing, transforming. This is starting in the transformational sector, and then the main beneficiary, the immediate beneficiary of this transformation is we will become so powerful, you know, in becoming such a collectively super intelligent hive mind, right, that we'll then be able to immediately direct the resources that are needed to make the two acts of saving happen, feeding and cooling. And then what's left is what's
all the minds are going to awaken when they finally have nourishment.
That's it. And when they lose the fear of not having nourishment tomorrow. If you don't have, if you're food insecure, you're afraid and you're under a lot of stress, and it's a vicious cycle and it's horrible. So we just have to eradicate that. Just like they, you know, supposedly eradicated polio back in the 50s or whatever, you know, we need to eradicate hunger and malnutrition. And we're going to do it with this universal stew, plant-based, 100% plant-based, and immune boosting, and so many good things. So,
Yeah, thank you for bringing that around about the shelter. And you know, you mentioned the tent. It took me back to, there was a period of my life where I did live in a tent for 4 months, and it wasn't really by choice, but it was one of the most peaceful times in my life, actually, because my only concern was that I needed to be fed, and I was. And the day-to-day life was so simple and so rooted in just the basic needs. It gives you a lot of freedom of your spirit and your creative mind. So need to let go of this idea that the only worthwhile thing in life is productivity and money, you know, that our collective consciousness and going back to tribe and, you know, many hands make light work and all of that.
that is totally it. Totally it. And, you know, the hive mind is what really allows us to concentrate resources, right? Focus resources, mental, heart, gut, hive, collective. Just like here, whenever we're in a great conversation, we're concentrating ourselves onto the topic at hand, right? Now imagine a network of conversations, and imagine that, you know, at a specific moment in time, say 3 months from now, the two most urgent topics are feeding everyone and cooling the planet, right? And because that urgency can now be efficiently signaled by the very power of the hive mind itself, it signals the urgency, drawing in people, right? And organizations and communities and into to focus on these problems and their solutions, all right? You know, initially the focus is on analysis of the problem, understanding, sense making, collective sense making, and then, all right, now we brain swarm, an actual methodology. We brain swarm and in other ways generate ideas for solutions. We then take those ideas from just concept all the way through to design, prototyping, modeling, computer modeling, prototyping, testing, and all this can happen very quickly. It doesn't have to happen over the course of years or months like it used to in the old paradigm. With the hive mind, stuff can happen insanely quickly because the hive mind is always working, and it's always drawing resources where it needs focus, right?
Something I was encouraged in acupuncture school, our master told us, you know, you don't, if you get to a certain level with your consciousness, you don't have to know ahead of time, meaning that the answers will just come from the collective consciousness. Like this person's consciousness that you're treating will infuse with yours, and you will just know intuitively what to do and where your place is in this time of healing. And as we're all coming together and thinking about this really big topics that can be overwhelming sometimes, because where do you start? But each of us does have our own I want to say like string of the harp, you know, they all make a sound together, but we each have our own, like, unique vibration that contributes to the sound of the hive. And so we're all needed. We're all needed in our own way to make this happen. Welcome, Tomogato. Welcome.
Yeah, welcome, Tomo. We are recording and broadcasting on Twitch, twitch.tv/Radish Live. And we're just kind of synthesizing. And yeah, I mean, it's really surreal and so powerful to be in the midst of the exponential and to be self-aware of the exponential growth of the hive mind, right? And to be one of the clusters of imaginal cells that's closest to the, you know, the heart of it, right? And I feel we're very, very close to the heart of it. In fact, I'd love to actually draw some pictures about that if folks are in the mood. Show me a sign. Let me know you're here. If you want to see me draw a picture, or if you'd rather just drink a beer, I want to show you. Hey, Bridget, what you got there? Peace, love?
Yeah, man.
Right. All right, let me just get the appropriate technology set up here.
Jasmine, I saw you unmute earlier. Do you want to share?
I just kind of wanted to tap in to Jamin. Is that how you pronounce it? Your name?
Jamin, yeah, and by the way, you're coming through very faint, right? And so if you can get a lot closer to your microphone, that would be better.
Better? I might be in a funky spot. Can you hear me better? No, not yet.
Yeah, we can hear you okay now. Yeah, I think we're good.
Oh, good. Okay. No, I just wanted to chime in with what you were saying, Jim. It was, about the power, and it was really cool because I was just getting into my house, and I ran into a neighbor, and I could just tell like he was a little bit drained, and just experiencing this frequency with you all in, just feeling heard and feeling like I have a purpose. And even though I know I have a purpose, but it's just the collective energy that I'm experiencing. Like I was able to share that with my neighbor, which was like such a beautiful experience that just kind of deepened our neighborhood in a sense. And so I just wanted to share that with you all that, it's continuing, which is such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I heard what you said, but I had to crank my volume up to the max. The volume was quite low there, Jasmine. But anyway, hopefully you can get that sorted out on your end with the microphone or whatever. But anyway, yeah, thank you so much. And look, and if I understood you correctly, you're sharing what we're talking about with your neighbor or is having a positive impact on the neighborhood. And did I understand that correctly? Anyway,
That's
okay.
why
Yeah. Sorry, I had to max out my microphone again, my volume again.
Yeah, I can remember when neighborhoods were very strong communities. Everyone knew everyone else, and heaven help you as a kid if you got in trouble because the entire neighborhood was going to police and let your parents know before you got back. And now we hardly know the people next door, and that's sad to me.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, Jasmine, thank you so much. And because here's the thing, the way I see it, and by the way, I did a neighborhood project with a couple other neighbors over the weekend, building up this row of mailboxes, right? And mixing the concrete and everything to put the big posts in and all that to support all these mailboxes. And, and then we celebrated with beer afterwards and all that. And we're just kind of cackling away. And it was just a great, neighborhood sort of experience. I told them what we're working on. And I told them that we're going to eradicate hunger. And I told them how we're going to do it and da-da-da-da-da, right? And they started to get excited. Here's the thing. What we're doing here is really good news. Really, 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 really good news. Saving, healing, and transforming life on Earth. And this is the epicenter right here. The reason I know that is because if there are other epicenters, we're going to find each other very quickly. Right? And 24/7 is no kidding. We're going to get to 24/7. And, and if there's others who are 24/7, again, we're going to find each other very quickly and we're going to merge. Or at a minimum, we're going to connect, right? Networks connecting with networks, because I'm a believer in separate networks, believe it or not. Separate, but connected, right? I mean, only separate in the sense that, each has kind of their own identity, because the reality is, and I'm really not into, people being separated in any way, shape, or form, but the reality is, just like an orange is naturally divided into sections, that's just how an orange works. And each section is divided into these sacs or whatever they're called, those little things that pop. Okay, human beings are organized into tribes. It's just how it works. Okay, I didn't write the rules. I'm not trying to reinforce the rules, or it's just kind of by nature. And and it's driven by such factors that, like we live on an island, so the tribes on whose land were guests, had a culture and a people and an everything that was very much based on island life, a lot of fishing and a lot of berries and whatever, right? But it was very island. Way up in Alaska, whole separate deal. Way down in the Atacama Desert of South America, whole different deal. So it's like, of course we're going to organize it. But anyway, but the bottom line is, okay, I went off on a tangent there. The bottom line is, we make sense of the world through the lens of our collective tribe, right? And those of us who are fortunate enough to belong to different tribes, multiple tribes, we get to see the world through multiple lenses and do this kind of sense making. And for me, it was just really delicious culturally to go back and forth between the United States and Mexico, which I've done a lot of my life. I've lived grand total over 5 years in Mexico, including some very formative years. So now we're able to actually do this in a systematic, programmatic way with an architecture that is just mind-boggling, which is all these different tribes forming their respective networks. And it doesn't have to be one network, one tribe. There can be multiple networks for a given tribe. But in the end, everybody, please join one network or more, one or more networks of conversation along the lines of what we're grappling with here. How do we save, heal, and transform life on Earth? That's the only game in town. Because if we don't do that, There ain't going to be nothing else. We're all going to be dead. We're Humpty Dumpty at the top of the food chain. We're going to fall the farthest and land the hardest, and it'll be splat, and it's over. If we don't master the saving, if we don't save life on Earth, there's not going to be an opportunity to heal or transform beyond that, right? So this is the only game in town. Join a network of conversations. And if one doesn't exist within your tribe, build a network of conversations within your tribe. We will help you. I don't care what your tribe is, what your language, come here, we will help you. The world needs to organize itself into networks of conversations. The easiest way to do it is by tribe. So do it, and then just like a United Nations brought together the nations of the world in a certain particular way, we need to bring together the networks of the world, the networks of conversations together in a whole bunch of very particular ways, right? Notably, we need, just like passports and international agreements between countries make it so that people can travel between countries, right, with their respective passports and, whatever that entails. We need to make it easy for people to go even from network to network, right? And go into tribes that, 100 years ago considered, or even 10 months ago, were considered enemies. Now we can come and have conversations, right? And, and it's not necessarily that every, conversation in Hebrew led by Jews is going to be instantly friendly to anyone from, whatever XYZ Arab country, West Bank, whatever wants to come in, particularly if they're from a terrorist organization or whatever. That's not instantaneous. I get that. And so there have to be separate sort of safe spaces that are, not just, hosted by professional hosts, but hosted essentially by diplomats, right? With folks with strong diplomatic and cross-cultural and XYZ. You know what I'm saying? I'm kind of hand waving here, but what else am I going to do?
It makes a lot of sense. This is Jasmine. Can you hear my volume? Did
Way
it get better?
Infinitely better.
Yay.
Thank you so much for fixing that.
I was plugged into Bluetooth. I think that was the problem. So no, I hear what you're saying, because in a sense, like Africa has amazing resources. Like, I can't remember exactly. I think it's like rice. There's like there's a commodity that they're just really an abundance of. And a couple years ago I was hearing, they wanted more people to integrate with them because they just have this resource. And the people that I've dealt with and had friends with in Africa, they're just amazing, beautiful people, just very kind-hearted and loving. And so, I see this, not only having, domestic trade, but international trade, because just as a collective world, we are all rich in different resources, just like immediately how we have abundance in some things, but then we have needs in other things. So it makes so much sense to me. And one thing I'd like to share is, oh gosh, I think it had to have been about 5 years ago. I was in Manitou Springs, Colorado, and there was a group of people. I mean, it was a rather large group of people, and they were making stone soup. And I thought it was the first experience I ever had of stone soup. And I thought it was just so brilliant because it was an event for children, teaching children about stone soup. And so that's when, a few days ago when you were speaking about I can't remember what you called it, but it was unity soup or some sort. But it just makes so much sense that what I was experiencing 5 years ago is just escalating to what I'm experiencing now, which is just such a great, kind of lead up to what's leading up from this. And I was almost getting like this visual because, speaking about, I almost want to make another word for like homeless, because I feel like homelessness is not an appropriate word for what the actual experience is. But with all the different soup kitchens and all the different food banks, and even food banks experience a ton of waste. It's unbelievable how much food waste is even made through the food banks. And so if there was a way to just organize that, and then there's all these chefs and there's all these like people that just love to cook and love to serve, and there's lots of people that love to eat, and it makes so much sense. And I feel like it reminds me back to when you're most happy is when you're eating with people and you're communicating, and there's just this vibrancy that the food creates with the community. And so that's why I'm so grateful for this topic, because it just keeps reassuring that what my passion is to feed people, because I feel like that's our first basic need. And then when you're fed, then you can do everything else from there. So thank you.
Jasmine, what's stone soup?
Oh man, it's a lot of vegetables. I actually have this stone soup book. It just magically appeared in my life, which is so amazing. But I really do not want to tear up the philosophy of stone soup.
I can tear it up.
Go for it.
I can tear it up if you pass me the mic. So here's what's up. You don't even have to ride a bike. So stone soup. So it's the end of World War I, and there are these 3 French soldiers working their way across the countryside to get back home. The war is over, so what there is to do is go home. And so they're on their way home. They're tired. They're hungry. They're dirty, and all of France is all shot up, and just so they're suffering everywhere. And so they get to this village in the afternoon, and they just want to rest and hopefully get some food. Now, the villages in France up to this point had been regularly plundered by armies of whatever flavor, right? If an army's moving through, we're hungry, we need the food, we're taking your food. So they had quite enough of that, thank you very much. And so when these 3 soldiers come into town, they're like, we don't have any food. We have no food. And so the soldiers say, well, goodness, if there's no food, then let's make stone soup for the whole town. And so they ask if anyone has a big pot that they can borrow to make stone soup. And a farmer comes out with a big old heavy, iron pot. I mean, it's like, what are they going to do? Run off with this half-ton pot? No, so they bring out the pot. All right, stone soup, right? And people are starting to gather around. What's this all about? So into the clean pot, they pour a bunch of water, get a fire going. And one of the soldiers goes down to the river and gets a very clean, washes it off in the river, smooth, oval kind of shaped, sizable stone, that weighs maybe over 2 pounds, right? Yay big. And all washed and clean, comes and takes that stone and puts it into the bottom of the pot, which at this point is now getting quite warm, quite hot, and soon it'll be boiling. And people are fascinated, and it's like, this soup is for who? You're making it for yourselves? No, it's for the whole village, everyone. This is going to be for everyone. Stone soup for everyone. And now it just so happens that one of the farmers who had grown a bunch of onions and had them stashed in his attic they're going to go bad if they don't get eaten, right? So he figures, you know what? Since this is something the whole community is going to enjoy, can I contribute my onions to the stone soup? Yeah, please bring your onions. Chop, chop, chop. We got onions in there. Another farmer who's got a whole bunch of heads of garlic that were stashed away. But wait a second, they're going to go bad if we don't eat them. Can I contribute my garlic? Sure, sure, sure. And, someone's got some barley that could go bad, but no, let's throw it in. Boom, boom, boom. And next thing you know, little by little, you've got this raging stone soup and the whole community eats together. And just like from that movie, The Parent Trap, because though we haven't got a lot, we could be sharing what we've got together. So that's stone soup. And really, yes, it's about feeding the community, but it's so profound. It's about the community really coming together and pitching in and sharing, right? And caring and eating together. I mean, it's so simple. Now, what we're talking about with Universal Stew is taking that to a very large scale, right? A whole city at a time, and creating these, using, factories that have either gone, bankrupt or abandoned or whatever, but, food processing factories or industrial kitchens, right? Taking those and producing at massive scale this stew, right? And so at this point, I'd like to break into picture drawing mode. Let me make the
While you're doing that, what's the significance of the stone at the bottom of the pot?
It's just I think it signifies a number of things. It gets it very grounded, among other things, right, to the earth. But it's like another piece of meaning for me is, let's say that there was literally no food to be had anywhere, right? Just going through the ritual of making a soup, right? And having that platform, right? It's like a soup starter because it brings people together, right? So it's like a starting point. You start with, it's almost another message to me is like starting with a dream, starting with a vision, and creating a platform, creating a container, right? That's what we're doing here. We're creating a container for the network of conversations called The Conversation.
I'm sure the stone also sparked curiosity, right? What are these guys doing making stone soup?
Exactly. Curiosity. Exactly. All right. So I would love to screen share and show this drawing I'm cooking up. So let me do that.
Some Stone Age marketing.
Yeah. All right. So imagine you've got this food truck, okay? Kind of like, y'all have seen these, these delivery trucks, local delivery trucks that are delivering, whether it's milk or natural gas or something like that, but basically a big oval shaped, sausage shaped tank in the back. Well, imagine that thing is just full of this, universal stew. Okay. And that, essentially we have, a glorified spigot on the back, right? And this is all like food grade, ultra sanitized, ultra hygienic. And we have, and we go out to all the neighborhoods, right? And everyone who comes along, they have to be wearing a mask and they have to respect, the 10-foot rule and all that. And they come each carrying their own container, right? If it's this woman who's got 8 kids, she's going to bring a really big container or multiple, with, maybe her oldest kid in tow, carrying another container of his own, right? And we'll fill you up right there. Boom. It's food on tap, right? I mean, how cool is that? And the thing is, because of the scale at which we're buying the food, big 40 ton 18-wheeler truckloads at a time. At 40 tons, we get lentils at a whopping 6.5 cents per pound dry weight. Lentils, one of the most nutritious foods on earth, right? So what's going to happen is we're going to have these massive, industrial kitchens with loading bays that these trucks are going to back into. Out come the raw materials, truckloads of potatoes and rice and lentils and onions and carrots and garlic, and out the other end will be these delivery trucks carrying the stew, cold stew, right? So that it doesn't decompose, it keeps, right? We deliver it cold, you heat it up. But the rice is already cooked. The beans are soaked and cooked and cleaned and, but done at an industrial scale. And these trucks go from there out to every neighborhood, to the far reaches of every city and town. And they make their deliveries. Deliver, food on tap, whatever you need, as much as you need. And we make deliveries every 2 or 3 days to every neighborhood. Guaranteed everyone's going to eat healthy, nutritious, high protein, immune boosting, complete spectrum nutrition, universal stew. I mean, it's just, when the vision came to us, it was just like, we have to do this. There's no way we can't do this. Let's do it. So we're starting in Tempe, Arizona, led by Dr. Silas Rao. And we're going to get our first truckloads donated, and we're building the economic machinery to have ongoing profits from CCC companies donated as well. And voila. But really, this is going to start a revolution of the heart, a revolution of love and compassion, where people are going to see, for so little donation, so many people can eat, that it'll simply become a craze. It'll be like the Beatles in the early 1960s. Everyone will just be screaming, we've got to make this happen. Let's do it. I'm donating. Let's all donate. Whole farmers will just donate their farms to the cause, right? Whatever you need to grow, let's grow it. Bring the equipment, bring the fertilizer. This is my land. I'm just contributing it to the cause. I love it so much. Whole restaurant owners will just donate their big industrial kitchens, whatever. We'll get so many kitchens just cranking it out. And we'll have different varieties, right? We'll have a gluten-free universal stew, and another one that's just rich with pasta and barley, and bring on the gluten, damn it. I love it, right? Oh, you don't like garlic? Fine. Here's a garlic-free, whatever free, right? Everything is free food. Making this basic human need a basic human right. And then you know what, Heather? If you want to chill in your tent, you chill in your tent, because the food, we're going to bring the food. I don't care if you're living in a tent or a yurt or a whatever, right? Or we're living with Ernie and Bert from the Sesame Street. Wherever you're living, however you're living, we're going to bring you food.
Yes.
It's as simple as that. And once you've got food on tap for everyone, it becomes so crazy efficient. And then it's just like, what took us so long? Right?
Wow. How did that vision come? I'm curious. Was it like in a dream, or was it through a conversation, or?
Yeah, here, let me pull up an image to screen share, because this will really tell the story. All right.
Chris says, Jesus, I love the way Jamin talks about this, man.
Thank you. Thank you. Where is that image? Okay, finally found it. All right. Okay, So I'm going to screen share. Somebody's microphone's going crazy. That's Jeff. Jeff, I'm going to mute you, bro. And okay, thanks. All right, so screen sharing. All right, so this is an image of the first community cafe project that we undertook in the town of Rosamond, California, where we put together a temporary, in this case, but the idea is that they be permanent, community cafe where we feed everyone for free, nutritious, plant-based foods for free. Just make it a basic human right. And so we started in Rosamond, California, a community where there's a fair amount of poverty in the Mojave Desert, California, a community of about 15,000 people. And on their annual parade of lights, we fed the whole town. We're like, look, if this is going to be a celebration, where the heck is the food? We'll bring the food. And everybody loved it. The Spanish speakers amongst them were saying, es un milagro, es un milagro. It's a miracle. It's like, finally, right? Because in Mexico, you know, like if there's a festival, of course you feed everyone. You know, the American way is you charge everyone money for it, right? And and the idea, the big vision was to build, they're literally in Rosamond itself, because it's out in the desert, so it's totally flat and land is super cheap. Build an assembly line of 40-foot containers, 40-foot shipping containers, those big durable boxes, packed with all the equipment you need to roll out a community cafe anywhere in the world. And then we then supply truckloads of rice, beans, and other, raw materials, other foods, right, in bulk, right, to those community cafes where the kitchen, because all the kitchen equipment would be in the box. You build it out, whether it's under a tent or whatever, which would be the default, because the first places we're going to deploy these are where people are starving. Ship them a community cafe and get all the logistics to supply the rice and beans, basically, and other, vital ingredients. So it was born out of this idea of feeding
Did we
everyone.
lose Jamin, or is
Yeah.
it just my computer?
What's the question? Was there a question? Or are we having a connectivity problem?
It sounded like it might have been.
Christopher?
Sorry, I was thinking maybe a connectivity problem. Heather just disappeared.
Okay. But were you able to hear me continuously, or was I ever
I absolutely was. Yeah, I think it's just Heather that was having problems.
Oh,
there.
gotcha. Okay, well, hopefully she'll be back. All right, and thanks everyone for all the kudos and all the goodness. And but I want you to consider, there's a half dozen of us here. If you weren't here right now, this thing would be whatever, 17% smaller than what it is, right? That's a lot. So it's all of us who are making this a reality. And so the idea of the universal stew basically came from, all right, how do we make a community cafe on wheels, right? What would it deliver and how would it deliver it? And I'll admit, for the longest time, I was hung up on this idea that it had to be delivered in some sort of package. All right, so let's make it reusable rather than like some single-use nonsense, right? And so I was thinking about how do we wash it and all this complicated logistics. And then at some point in there, it just kind of flashed that, wait a second, who says we need to package anything? Let them just show up with their own giant pot and we'll fill it up with universal stew. Food on tap. Oh my goodness. I love to hear questions, comments, challenges, better ideas, complimentary ideas, better ways to make it work, whatever, but love to hear people's thoughts on this.
I'm going to chime in for a second. It's so inspiring. I'm reminded of an experience I had 15 years ago when I was really low energy and really not feeling well. And a family that was 2 hours south of where I was living at the time had this vision of trying to help people restore their health. And they chose to do a study to see if green smoothies could improve people's digestive ability. And so I was a part of the Roseburg study that was published in her book, Green for Life. And this is the Bachenko family that they got the community involved, borrowed all the Vitamixes and got all this food and wild harvested some of the great greens from the Oregon forest lands, and they'd make 48 quarts of green smoothies every 2 days and drive them 2 hours north to 3 drop-off places, and we all brought our quart jars and filled up our quart jars with green smoothies. And 30 days after eating green smoothies, I started, 7 days into eating them, I was like feeling an improvement. And my health continued to improve as I was a part of this journey and learning and taking care of myself in a different way. So I love the vision. I love the enthusiasm, and we just continue adding to the, to the collaborative effort, and all kinds of things are possible.
Totally. Starting with the 2 most urgent for saving life on Earth. Welcome back, Heather. We missed you, but I don't think you've missed a beat. But it's funny that you mentioned these green smoothies, because I was talking with Melissa just a couple nights ago about, because I make green smoothies out of kale that we grow here and, other natural ingredients. And oh my goodness, I love my green smoothies. And it just hit me, wait a second. We can have, hundreds of acres of kale and this and that and all kinds of healthy greens and ginger and citrus and, chia seeds and hemp hearts and all kinds of goodness. We dump it in, blend up huge quantities of this smoothie, bring it down to just above freezing, right? And we have tanks of that going around town. Green smoothies, bring your cup, bring your thermos, bring your whatever, right? This is now food. So universal stew with green smoothies. The only other thing that I would add to that is bread. There's just something about bread, right? And, we'll get all the Christians all riled up. I mean, loaves and fishes, loaves and stew and green smoothies, right? And so, I mean, it's just like, what could be cooler? Green smoothies, loaves of healthy bread, whole grain, multi-grain, whatever, gluten-free if you prefer, right? And universal stew. I mean, that's all I want to eat anyway, is green smoothies, universal stew, and some delicious bread, delicious hot bread. That's the one thing we deliver, hot bread, cold stew, cold smoothies. But the bread will be hot and fresh. Oh my goodness, people will love it. Hey, it's the bread truck. And then we just come and people will just dig right into it. And they'll probably have their own vegan spread right there at home and pop, pop, pop. And it's just like everyone will eat hot bread at the same time.
There's no more enticing smell than hot bread unless it's cookies.
You are so right, Linda. And it's that smell, this hot, fresh. I mean, but the whole idea is just make it and boom, ship it immediately, get it out there. So there's just no wastage of time. There's no spoilage. It's all fresh and immediate, because that truck is not going to last long until it's all emptied out, and then bring it back, sanitize it in an eco-friendly way, and fill her up again for more deliveries. It's that simple, right? It's going to be food, friends, and fun, but at a planetary scale. We're eradicating hunger and malnutrition here. And it's going to happen so fast because we're going to start in Tempe and Tucson, Mexico City. And Christopher, where are you at in Canada? Ottawa?
I'm in Kitchener, Waterloo, Ontario. So like an hour and a half out of Toronto.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, great. Ontario. Okay, sorry for getting that wrong. Anyway, so it's like this thing is just going to spread like wildfire when people see how efficient it is, right? And how much bang for the buck. And the fact that we've now got hunger on the run, everyone wants to be a part of a winning campaign. Nobody wants to be on the wrong side of history. And when I took not exactly this idea as well formed as this, when I took the idea of ending hunger to Bill Gates, when I worked at Microsoft as corporate strategy manager, Bill Gates was not interested. He was simply not interested. If I had an idea for how to make more money for Microsoft, and I had plenty of those, he was interested in all that, but not in feeding the hungry. But now, when he sees that we've got hunger on the run, he doesn't want to go down in history as, you know, the richest person in the world who didn't contribute to the ending of hunger. It's only going to take us like a few tens of billions of dollars per year to buy all the grain, legumes, potatoes, onions, carrots, peppers, and other just, you know, vital basic ingredients. And by the way, you know, just like we're starting with one single universal stew, right? You know, and then adding on the green smoothies and then adding on the bread. Likewise, we'll add different, you know, variations of stew, right? So, you know, when we're serving, say, the Korean and Chinese neighborhoods of Los Angeles, right, predominantly, we'll have, you know, really nice, you know, options that cater to those taste buds that want soy sauce in their food. If there's no soy sauce, then what the heck, you know? And maybe that's something that they add on afterwards, but it has to be something that's, you know, soy sauce friendly, like rice or rice noodles or something like that, just to give one example. Likewise with, you know, predominantly Mexican and Hispanic neighborhoods. They like their corn and beans. They're, you know, and those happen to be very nutritious foods, especially when they're combined. And, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, we'll start real simple with a single universal stew for Tempe, Arizona.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is to have that great. I was on the meeting Friday. We were talking to the chef who had vegan recipes, and you want to incorporate her on getting a great tasting recipe. I think that's the key. You know, look at the business model of successful restaurants. Let's just take Chipotle, right? They just specialize in making one burrito, and then they have a couple other things on the side, but it's just like, that's their specialty. You go there for the burrito. So the stew's just got to be, that first stew's got to be hit home run, you know, and everyone's got to love it and get the word out there on that one, and then expand.
Beautiful. Yeah. Now, once we do the press conference in Arizona, the thing is going to go crazy. Have you all seen at least a portion of the press conference I did with President Vicente Fox about the legalization and regulation of cannabis?
I have not.
No, that sounds awesome.
Okay, all right. Let me play just like a few minutes of that, and let me just get it teed up here. Okay, so first, just a couple words on the context for this. So, having had this dream and vision of ending world hunger, and seeing that even the wealthiest people on the planet are not wanting to kick in, right? And part of the reason they don't want to kick in is that if they start to kick in and there are still more hungry people to feed, you know, maybe it's going to be for them, they could see themselves spending all their money on this, right? And then what? Right? And I think that's probably at the root of the fear. So I was working hard on figuring out, you know, how do we you know, fund the end of hunger? And as I was contemplating that and working on some software to help kind of like model food production and distribution to optimize it holistically in a way that's, you know, healing for the planet, along comes the legalization train of cannabis that was about to make its major stop in the state of Washington. On the same election that President Barack Obama got reelected to a second term, the state of Washington voted to legalize cannabis. And so I saw a huge opportunity to create the first and leading brand of cannabis based on my great-grandfather's legacy. My great-grandfather, Diego Pellicer, was a Spaniard, and he was the largest grower of hemp in the world in the Victorian era. He had his hemp plantations in the Philippines, thousands of acres of it. Anyway, so based on his legacy, I built the first brand of premium cannabis, Diego Pellicer. And here, I'll do a screen share. And it became big news because I'm this ex-Microsoft, former, you know, corporate strategy manager at Microsoft. And so it was like big news that I was jumping into cannabis and I became sort of the lead voice for the cannabis industry for, you know, from late 2012 through early 2014. And until some criminal drug cartels started making very credible threats against me and my family, which became a bit much for me to handle. And I had to get the heck out of there, frankly, for the time being. But then I found a way to fight back that was very creative and is still ongoing. But anyway, that's a whole other story. But let me just show this. This is the key press conference that got the world's attention. Some of you may even remember it. But here I am with President Vicente Fox of Mexico, and he was now former president. I actually met him when he was president. I was working on a project in Mexico that he came out to inaugurate as president, but that's a different story for another day. Here we are announcing to the world that we're moving forward in spite of President Barack Obama being silent on the issue. So this press conference forced the hand of President Barack Obama. And wait, I just need to make sure that my screen share is, that I've done the right, no, I needed to share a couple other things. Okay, so 1 minute. We're almost there. Okay, that's what I gotta do. Okay, now it'll work. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. All right, here goes.
Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for being here. Before I introduce our distinguished guests, I would like to begin with a quote from the late astrophysicist Carl Sagan. "The illegality of cannabis is outrageous, an impediment to full utilization of a plant which helps produce the serenity and insight, sensitivity and fellowship so desperately needed in this increasingly mad and dangerous world." Carl Sagan. But by making cannabis illegal, we have instead turned it into a tool for violence, exploited by criminals and organized crime. spanning many countries. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a unique moment in history. The Berlin Wall of the prohibition of cannabis is weak, and it is crumbling as we speak. And just as happened in Berlin in 1989, the old guards who used to protect the wall of cannabis prohibition are laying down their weapons and walking away. What remains to be done is to safely and systematically dismantle the wall of prohibition and replace it with a system of laws, international agreements, regulations, and standards to ensure a prosperous and, above all else, safe cannabis industry. We are moving forward. The states of Washington and Colorado are leading the way. We have waited long enough for some sort of a green light from Washington, D.C., telling us that it is okay to proceed. In fact, the silence from our nation's capital has been deafening. We are moving forward with our plans to build a national and eventually international network of cannabis businesses spanning the production, processing, distribution, and retail of cannabis and cannabis-based products. Our network will span both the medical and the social use cannabis markets. As a first step in building this national network, as CEO of Diego Pellicer Incorporated, I am proud to announce that we have acquired the rights to the Northwest Patient Resource Center, headed by Mr. John Davis, who I will introduce shortly. We are also in the final stages of acquiring a smaller but equally professional chain of medical cannabis dispensaries in the great state of Colorado. With these acquisitions, along with other acquisitions in the works from California to Washington, we are creating the first national brand of retail cannabis. We have also created the first risk-mitigated investment vehicle for investing directly in this $100 billion industry, which is growing by the day. This is a crucial development which will enable us to expand our business model into new markets. Our expansion will be cautious and measured, as my colleague John Davis will discuss. Next, it is my pleasure and profound honor to introduce to you a man who has dedicated his life to transforming his country and our world into a more peaceful, loving, and prosperous planet. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you the first freely elected president of Mexico, Señor Presidente.
Congratulations for that position. This state of Washington.
All right, before I continue to pass the microphone to our distinguished guest, first freely elected president of Mexico, I first wanted to pause and see if there's any questions from the audience before I proceed.
Good, that's you, Jamin?
Yeah, I clean up pretty good.
Oh, right.
Any other questions or comments?
What happened to the biz?
We'll get to that, but first let me just, well, it was taking off like crazy, and then I started to get death threats against me and my family from criminal drug cartels.
Oh yeah, you explained that.
And that's an ongoing story that is by no means over. I did retreat a bit to save my life, but then I fought back, and I'm continuing to do so, and it's an ongoing adventure. Let's put it that way.
And
All
how
right.
did you come in touch with the president of Mexico?
So, well, I first met him when I was running a different business, Shively International, where we were importing computers into Mexico and building and operating educational computer centers and cyber cafes. So we were rolling out educational computer centers inside public schools like gangbusters. This caught the attention of then president of Mexico, Vicente Fox. Same guy, but what was it then? 12 years earlier, right? And so the governor of the state of Sinaloa, with whom I had signed an historic contract to build these computer centers, he invited President Vicente Fox to come out to inaugurate Shively International's 25th educational computer center in Western Mexico. So he flies out, and I've got pictures of that, which I can share. He flies out, does the inauguration. I give him a tour, and, we had a nice connection, but, here he is, president of Mexico, fighting a drug war and poverty and transforming the healthcare system and all that. So, I don't think we were the biggest priority on his map, but definitely the digital divide was a priority. And so, it was important enough for him to come out and meet us all and learn about what we're, the revolution we were starting, the computer revolution, to bridge the digital divide, to tear down that wall. So tearing down the wall of the digital divide, tearing down the Berlin Wall of prohibition, tearing down the Berlin Wall of hunger, right? We're all about tearing down walls. So, one of the main takeaways, and wait till you see what President Vicente Fox says and how impactful it is. We are going to tear down the wall of hunger, and the key inflection point will be the press conference, very similar to what you just saw, right? Announcing to the world the end of hunger.
Hey, this is Jasmine. I'm mesmerized because I'm just really, like, after showing that video and kind of putting a few things together, I'm really realizing I'm trying to think of the way to say it without overthinking it, but this is not a coincidence. For all of us to be here right now is not a coincidence. And it's just like, I can go into detail where, like, for the years of 2012 to 2014, what you're mentioning, I all of a sudden found this portal of cannabis and literally helped people go viral, and then shifted into other things to kind of where I'm at now. But then fast forward about the food, incorporating the food like similar to cannabis, it's really no different because it's growing a nutritious plant. And I think what's so mesmerizing through this whole experience right now is that the person who I am sees these different food systems, because I was raised by entrepreneurs that had restaurants on both sides. So I'm exactly 50% Cuban, and my grandfather had a restaurant. He was trained in Germany as a chef and came to New York City in the days of immigrant migration and established himself in New York City as a restaurant owner. And so I experienced those different chains. And then my aunt on my Cuban side had a very high-end restaurant in Los Angeles that was very successful. So I see those two, how you're talking about these big commercial kitchens. And I think what I'm trying to visualize is people actually opening up their hearts and their arms and their minds to really truly understand what we are all capable of, which is just so impressive, because then it's all happening right now, this second, like Meals on Wheels. That's exactly what Meals on Wheels is supplying a food chain to people that are the most vulnerable people that can't go to the grocery store, but then that's another chain. So there's like all these food chains, and the only main reason why I truly understand this is because I used to be a food broker. And so being a food broker, you understand the brokerage of food and commodity, which people have no understanding of, as well as so many other systems. So it just really blows me away, like more and more. And I feel like my heart is just opening, like the staircase to my heart is just in so much awe, because it's happening before our eyes, except for that it just needs to be connected. And that's what's really, I'm seeing the forthcoming of how do you really break these greed systems, because I feel like that's why we're wasting so much, because greed to me equals lack. And so if we see greed all over, and so I'll let you, that's a whole interesting topic in itself, but to keep it real and positive and on this abundance level, it's the connection, just like how our neurons connect in our brain, is just how our hearts need to connect in order to really fulfill the greatest need of mankind.
So beautifully put, Jasmine. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for receiving. I feel like it's 40 years of being born on this earth and experience this hunger within myself, but then also seeing so many, like, it's unbelievable within the last 4 years of being a part of social eco-justice and understanding what we're feeding each other. And that really stemmed from my brain just going on mute, in a sense that I had to utilize other senses in order to walk and live on this earth. And my intuition was my greatest guide, and having faith was my greatest guide. And so I feel like it's led me to appreciate the most simplest things in life, which is how food tastes on our tongue, and then how it nourishes every single microscopic piece in our bodies. And then that just creates to the fuller of the fuller of the fuller, to then the higher conscious. And I feel like that's truly the most miraculous way to get to this higher conscious of this most potential, because I feel like we're not even operating at our greatest potential because we're so malnourished. And so it comes from such an experiential place of just being a human and having karma on this planet.
Yes, I agree. And not only have we been starving physically, we're starving emotionally and spiritually as well. There's a neuroscientist that studied and showed that the default setting of the brain is the social one, and that the analytical and the social brain kind of work like on a seesaw. And so when the social one's off, the analytical one goes off, and when the analytical one's on, the social one goes off. And The social one isn't like, oh, you go on Facebook and your social brain gets activated. That's not it. Your social brain is responsible for picking up on tone of voice and body language. And the way that we're living now, isolated and looking at our screens, we're using that analytical brain. We're basically starving our brain of social interaction and starving our brain from being in the setting that it's most comfortable and most efficient. So I'll drop the neurosurgeon's YouTube video in the chat if anyone wants to watch it. It's really fascinating.
Yes, please. That really does sound so amazing. And I think, this makes more clarity for me to truly, our brain, I used to train triathletes in my 20s, in my 30s. And I would always say, like, the brain is like the motherboard, like when you're swimming, because your brain is like, controls, your breath and like your muscles and, like your nervous system and just everything that you really have to do when you're swimming. And the more that I'm learning about healing my own brain and learning how much nutrition it takes to heal your brain, let alone what it takes just to breathe and walk and talk and continue to feed yourself. Like there's all these different energy, that it's within the brain. It's still like all these electrical systems that, it's so intriguing how much self-care our brains need in when you don't have to heal it or repair it. And that's what's I'm learning so much on a condition level right now about how people that don't have brain injuries just walk around in like this kind of conditioned state of mind. And so it's really like trying to educate people on them just being conscious. But then it's like, as a collective, when I see people, what they ingest in their everyday life, a lot of it is not nutritious. And so even though people are eating and spending thousands and thousands of dollars a week on food, they're not eating nutritious foods. So that's where, like, understanding to almost teach people like the basic need that food is so important by making it so simple. I'm really sensing this like stew, because I mean, most people, when they are cleansing their gut, that's another thing. People don't understand how important their brain function is dependent on their gut. And so that's like remarkable right there, because I'm just learning how our neurotransmitters are created in our intestines. And if your intestines are all inflamed and all diseased and not in its proper balance, then your brain is not going to be in good balance. And so that's what's so interesting. And then just even how our feet are connected to our gut in our brain. And now they're finding out that there's the little brain in our heart. So it's so impressive.
Yeah, it's all about the whole. Ourselves being fully integrated and ourselves being fully integrated. It's all about the whole. Nourishing the whole. If I'm not interrupting anyone, be cool.
No, it's so true. And I think that's why cannabis, like, that's why, like, thank you. I like to integrate the cannabis into food, because what's so interesting is that we do not have alcohol receptors. Our body does not have alcohol receptors. But our body has opioid receptors and cannabis receptors, like cannabinoids. I can never say it. And so what's really interesting is when, like, I ingest a lot of CBD, and it helps me in so many different ways. And that to me kind of helps to power up my motherboard to help me identify what my body needs. So maybe I'm dehydrated, I need to drink more water. Maybe, so I've sensed in myself that cannabis is just another food for our body. And so, it's really helping people to prioritize what is effective and efficient for the whole body in order for it to function in its ideal, optimistic vitality way that we're built. And so just through mass confusion and manipulation, I feel like we've gotten to this point of helping to fix and correct the situation without too much on our shoulders.
Tying to, sorry, Heather, were you about to, go ahead, Heather.
I'm gonna thank Jasmine for, the perspective of healing and finding ways to heal yourself. It's just really beautiful to hear you speak about it. So thank you so much.
I just manifested some unity stew myself.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. Super cool. Super cool. Yeah, really beautiful, Jasmine, and everyone. And I just building off of what you were talking about, we're malnourished, and check this out, we're malconnected to each other. We're malconnected. There's this natural connection that we're reconnecting to now through this very process of bringing ourselves together to work our stuff out. How do we feed our brothers and sisters? What could be more fundamental? So we're finally getting really, truly reintegrated, not just with each other, who we have the privilege of talking with face to face and stew to stew. Thank you, Jeff. But, all our other brothers and sisters who don't even have the privilege of being connected, and they're sitting there hungry, and
don't forget the animal kingdom.
And Melissa, thank you, sweetheart. And Melissa says, don't forget the animal kingdom and all the other species. See, we're all getting integrated as a whole world en route to a whole universe, right? But let's one planet at a time, please. Okay. So starting with Mother Earth. So we're malconnected. What are our connections consist of now, right? Stack ranking each other. What's your net worth? What's your net worth? What's your net worth? We're connected by financial and economic transactions. So we see each other as the enemy, and we're trying to just, defeat the enemy, get more and give less. How do I get more and give less, right? And then in terms of our brains, you were saying the analytical versus the social, right? So because we're in this sick, malconnected, sick substitute for an actual network, our brains go into this analytical mode, this game, this all-day Monopoly game that ends up just turning our brains into mush, right? Which then get rewired for, how do I acquire more money consciousness, and then it's just like, and we become sociopaths or mini sociopaths. And meanwhile, the malnourished side of us, malnourished in so many ways, because we're malnourished, we're fearful, because we're food insecure and nourishment insecure and touch deprived and therefore insecure, right? We just become these insecure, freaked out little golems trying to clutch whatever pennies we can manage to gather up, and mine precious. And it's just like we've become, our brains have gone to freaking mush thanks to the all day Monopoly game. It's disgusting. So whereas we need to be more social, this is bringing us back into the social, completely non-financial, right? There's no money involved here. We're just here because we love each other and we love Mother Earth, right? So anyway, just wanted to say all that. Thanks, everybody. Going on mute.
No, I'm really there with you because it's as a matter of fact, I was driving I was running some errands today, and I see the sign Broadway, and I mean instantly was like, because on Sunday I was so I love Denver. Denver is my heart is in Denver for these exact reasons what we're talking about. There are liquor stores, there are no grocery stores. And it's for miles and miles. And you have to get on a bus to go to a grocery store. And then you need bus money to get to the grocery store. And so it's quite the interesting, I'd say, animal in a sense that I was taking pictures to document the gentrification that's about to be, like literally in the next week or so, you can go walk down the street and it won't be the same. And so it's so interesting because just watching these communities just be uprooted, and all it really took, or all it really can take, is for somebody to bring their hammer and their heart and their soul to help somebody recycle a window so that they can have a new window than a dilapidated house. And I feel like that's what's also showing in this nutrition. You've got people that eat so much food that they waste it, and then you have people that have no food at all. And if the people that had all the food and didn't waste it gave it to the people that needed the food, then they would be able to fix their windows. And it's just such a, and what I'm trying to say through this is that we all have a choice. Everybody in the world has a choice to participate in this engine, in this money engine, and be starving, or to stop feeding the gasoline engine and to start feeding ourselves and our communities, and then to really create that the engine of healing rather than the engine of waste. And it's gonna take, I just see it happening, just one meeting at a time, one discussion at a time. Because I think in the end, even the people that have everything that they could possibly ever want and desire are still hungry. And so I feel like once they really truly realize that they are starving themselves, that there'll be no hesitation.
Yeah, the way I see it, I love that, Jasmine. And the way I see it happening is just like you said, one conversation at a time. It will become massively popular. Let's all simply invite everyone we know to this conversation. And as our numbers grow, we will break out into more and more other conversations, right? Our network of conversations will grow, spanning each and every facet of this that needs to be mastered. The nutrition, the farming, right? Including the urban farming, community gardens, rooftop gardens, backyard gardens, front yard gardens, windowsill gardens, indoor hydroponics, right? All the above, right? We need to master the finance of this. We need to master the logistics. We need to master the, the food production, the manufacturing, the industrial kitchens, right? We need to master the delivery. We need to master the marketing. We need to master the hygiene and sanitation and the rules and the practices and the culture of this so that it is guaranteed to be safe. There's so many things that need to be mastered. So we need conversations about all these things, about government relations, right? The legality of all this, right? And legal protection, insurance, right? All the administrative functions. We need to work with religious leaders across all the different faiths, right? Because we're going to need to form partnerships here, there, and everywhere. And, on multiple levels. There's so many things that need to be mastered. And we're going to do this through a network of conversations. And it all starts right here. So just invite everyone to this conversation. And for my side, where I'm most active in terms of these conversations is on Tuesdays and Fridays. Those are my big, all day, and in the case of Friday, into the night blowout days. Friday is the big one. Starts at 7 a.m. And I typically go all the way till 9, about 14 hours straight. But more and more folks are going to be joining, and each of us is going to figure out when during the 168 hours of the week, we want to be in conversation and on what topics and with what groups, et cetera, right? So it's this very dynamically evolving and above all else growing network of people and conversations so that we can simultaneously and holistically master all of these aspects and roll this out as quickly as possible. Now, who would like to hear President? Oh, go ahead, Jasmine. Sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say that's so cool because, in the end, it's like, to have so many venues for so many different meaningful reasons, and where I get with that is that, like, I appreciate the foundation because the foundation is food. Without food, nobody can do anything. Without water, so like without food and water, you can drink water for so long, you still have to have water, and so it's so interesting how having that foundation of nutrition and nutrients to then facilitate and develop so many other meaningful paths. And so that's why I really appreciate hearing where the time and the focus is to focus on the food. And then also that, there's this space for all these other meaningful developments.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, as we nourish the world, as we feed the world, and bring people together in the process, that just becomes this platform for a united humanity to now take on the next super urgent thing, which is planetary scale SRM, solar radiation management, to cool the planet in time. And the key to getting both of those things done is precisely this network of conversations, which is utterly transformational to the core. And it's the transformation of an entire species, right? You have to consider that we're watching this in slow motion, but if you speed it up, the whole species is in the process of transforming into a unified hive mind, just insanely powerful, hyper-connected network of humanity, right? Working together towards the common aims of feeding everyone, making sure everyone has shelter and clothing and healthcare and all this good stuff, and cooling the planet, and then healing, humanity and ecosystems, right? Caring for all of our creatures, all of our brother and sister species, and stopping this damn sixth mass extinction. And the key, the first and by far the most powerful lever to throw towards that end is cooling the planet through SRM, solar radiation management. If you're going to tattoo 3 letters on your forehead, make sure they are SRM, solar radiation management.
I'm surprised I haven't heard of that before.
It's a testament to our collective stupidity as a species right now. It's nothing more than that. It's a symptom of our collective stupidity, all being addicted to this all day Monopoly game.
That makes a lot of sense, because that brings me back to, hearing that on the radio about how East Boulder, it like literally it was a shock to my system to live in Boulder and to just understand that Boulder tries to create a fundamental image that they are the leading top eco efficient contributors to the world. Like literally, like just about a year ago, there was people from all over the world coming to Boulder. They came to Boulder to show off their 2035, 2050 carbonless footprint. And it was pretty interesting that, to hear this radio address that East Boulder is now leading in the most emissions being released. And I don't quote me on exactly, how much the carbon expression is, but it was really embarrassing to hear this, because this is going to be told nationwide, and internationally people are going to hear this. And so it makes me just really try to understand what's really shifting in which direction, just for my small little town that is boasting about eco-friendliness. And what I'm also trying to say is that I see within the last 2 years, how much fracking has been done in Boulder County. And the basis of it is that they were basically saying that people of affluent, and I mentioned this earlier, but people of affluency make 30% more emissions in carbon to the world. And so it just really blew me away, like this is happening before my eyes, and understanding that, yes, I can see why this is true, because they have bigger houses. So when you have a bigger house, you even cool your garage. I mean, that's how much, this is how much excess we are in when you cool your garage. And, with the temperatures are reaching highs in Colorado right now, the record highs, like you can't even be in an air-conditioned building and it doesn't even feel like it's air-conditioned. That's how much carbon we are releasing into our atmosphere right now. And then we're in our cars and we're sitting on our phones, doing phone stuff in our cars, running our cars with the air conditioning on. And with COVID going on, before you could just run into an air-conditioned building and do your work or whatnot, but now you do it in your car. So now we have more cars running, creating more carbon. So it's really interesting understanding how close our planet is to really in its greatest struggle. But then, you know, I know that it's just how what I'm now processing is how do people truly understand that they are participating in the extinction?
Yeah, no, really good points. You know, I'd like to shift gears to where we maybe pass it around a bit more, because I know lots of that we all want to share. So I think what I'll do is if we put a cap at like 2 minutes per shared, would that work for folks? 2 minutes per share? Okay, and I can just keep track of the time. Okay, awesome. And who wants to see the President Vicente Fox portion of that press conference? Because I wanted to share on top of that, you know, what we can do at the press conference to announce what we're announcing to end hunger, to end world hunger. Okay, so here goes. Okay, I always have to make sure all the technicals are good. Okay, here goes.
Has decided to lead a new path.
Oops. Okay, let me go back and find.
Unbearable.
Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you the first freely elected president of Mexico, Señor Presidente.
Congratulations for that position. This state of Washington, has decided to lead a new path, a path to change the paradigm by legalizing medical and social use of cannabis. In Mexico, we welcome this initiative because the cost of the war, in the case of Mexico, is becoming unbearable. Too high for Mexico, Latin America, and the rest of the world. The impact in the economy, on income, on tourism investment, loss of talent, and above all, loss of hope, and 80,000 kids dead in the last 6 years. All this because our neighbor to the north represents such a gigantic consumer market. We must get out of this trap, and here is the opportunity. Now this group here is moving accordingly from words into plans, and from plans into action, and the action in the arena. To play the real game, this group must understand the need to make good, safe, and legal use of these new laws for the benefit of the people and the common good. I am here convinced of the need for change and the search for new avenues in this difficult and unresolved issue. I am here to witness a paradigmatic change. I have too many questions about the implementation of these new laws and regulations and how it will impact our countries and communities. This is an issue of strategic interest and concern around the world. This historic step today is to be observed and evaluated closely by all of us because it is a game changer. Fox Center is an acting think tank, but also an action think tank. That is why we are here. A new culture will be emerging. New paradigm is arising, moving from criminalization to public health policies, separating health from violence and crime. Everybody should be attentive to ensure a positive, peaceful, and constructive transition to a new paradigm. This group of leaders here, government as well as lawmakers, have great responsibility upon their shoulders. They're making history, but they have to take this historic step to a safe port. The path is not easy. First and above all, the task is full compliance with the law, elimination of violence and crime, good responsible use of freedom, intense education programs and information, intense prevention practices, and the best possible benefits to the community within a solid foundation of morality, ethics, and values. To be successful is needed, number one, intense citizen, family, and community involvement. Number two, intense regulation on production, distribution, dealers, retailers, advertising, warnings, media behavior, quality controls, places to consume, ages to consume, prescriptions. Ensure at the same time integrity of all the players in the whole chain. Intense taxation to keep prices up and bring revenue to governments, to educate, to prevent, to inform. Intense information, intense education, intense prevention, intense third parties protection, intense responsible use of choice and freedom. Gains on this game: one, reduce and hopefully suspend income to organized crime and violence support. Intense increase in government's capacity to do the job. This will stop blood loss of youth like we have suffered in Mexico, and it's spreading out through Latin America. We all understand that we human beings perform best in scenarios of peace and harmony. A new responsible society will bring this peace and harmony. About the losses, we cannot be worse than where we are. The war has been lost all along, and it has been lost again and again. It's time for a new start. It's time for a new vision. And that's why I applaud this group that has the courage to move ahead. They have the vision, they're clear where they're going, and I'm sure they're going to get there. Thank you.
That's amazing. Thank you for showing that.
Jasmine, we hear you, but very faint. So it's probably a Bluetooth thing I think you got going on.
Sorry, I just wanted to say thank you for showing that. And What year was that?
That was in 2013, May 30th, 2013.
That's just like so impressive. Like fast forward, what, like 7 years, and where we're at now, like to have that much hope, like that was just beautiful. Like to hear all of the possibilities to look forward to.
Totally. And so we called it, and with what I said to the Obama administration, when I said that the silence from our nation's capital has been deafening on this issue, that forced their hand. Because we had the leader of the next biggest country in our continent, Mexico, demanding an answer, right? That forced their hand. They had to respond, and they responded positively within 3 months. So likewise, the press conference that we'll do in Tempe, Arizona will be of similar magnitude and historic importance. That one was about tearing down the Berlin Wall of Prohibition. This one is about building bridges to nourish, to connect with and nourish all of our brothers and sisters, including our brother and sister species and ecosystems. And yes, we're putting on our oxygen mask first, right? Feeding ourselves as kind of like the first priority, because with our oxygen mask on, now we can help, you know, the elder or the toddler sitting next to us. But we humans need to have our oxygen mask on. We need to be fed. We need to have our needs met. With our needs met, together we can go out there and do SRM to cool the planet and save life on Earth. And it's literally gotten to be that simple. We're at that point.
I think what's so interesting through this is what's also reminding me of the massive amount of methane that is being, you know, exposed to, you know, the layers of our universe. And, you know, I always, like, I have a very wonderful child that wants to be an inventor. And I just think of, like, you know, to try to figure out the invention of what to do with methane. That seems to be like such a pressing idea for me, because we can capture so many other gases, but we haven't figured out how to capture and how to recycle or do whatever with methane.
Can I comment on that, Jasmine?
Totally, please do.
All right. So the reason methane is being released up in the northern latitudes, including up into the Arctic, is because the temperature of the planet is increasing. And these, they're called something calthrate, something structures that were frozen in ice are now melting and releasing massive amounts of methane. And it's so distributed throughout the massive Arctic Ocean and Siberia and all that. It's just bubbling up everywhere. How the heck are you going to capture, you know, such a massive release? If it were concentrated at one point, okay, I can understand capturing it. But how do you capture it if it's spread over a third of the Earth or something like that, or whatever? Anyway, so the solution is to cool the planet. We need to cool the planet. It's the overheating of the planet that's causing the methane to be released. The solution is singular, meaning there is one solution: cool the planet. And there just so happens that there is only one way to cool the planet in time, and that is a massive deployment of solar radiation management, basically mirrors of different kinds, depending on the location, to reflect sunlight back into space at a massive scale. We're talking, you know, on the order of 2, 3, 4, 5% of the surface of the planet of being now mirrors reflecting sunlight back into space.
do we know what, like, I guess what I'm wondering is like what reflecting sunlight back into space, like, do we have knowledge of what that would do?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And we have knowledge at multiple levels. But at the most basic level, right now, the planet is a heat sink. It is absorbing and absorbing and absorbing heat at the level of the whole. Why? Because sunlight comes in, passes through all the greenhouse gases. A little bit of it gets reflected away by particulates. Most of it passes through, a lot of it gets reflected away by clouds, and some of it gets reflected away by ice, like the North Pole, the Arctic, but that ice is melting, so it's contracting. So less and less of it's getting reflected away. And as the economy contracts, there's less and less particulates, so less and less of it's getting reflected away from that channel as well. And so the sunlight passes through, hits the Earth, gets absorbed, and heats up the planet. The planet tries to cool itself off by emitting infrared radiation. Well, I don't know that it really thinks about it too much. It's just anything that's warm emits infrared radiation that re-radiates heat back into space. But that infrared radiation gets trapped by the greenhouse gases. The greenhouse gases let the visible spectrum light that's coming from the sun, they let that visible spectrum pass through, but they trap the infrared that's trying to escape, which is the way the planet cools itself. So we are retaining and retaining and retaining and retaining and retaining heat, right? Like the guy who just keeps on drinking Coca-Cola but can never pee. He just becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. We're retaining and retaining and retaining heat, and that's melting the ice, heating up the oceans, and therefore causing all this methane to be released. And it's a vicious cycle because that methane then adds to the greenhouse gases, causing us to retain even more heat. So we are in a death spiral of planetary overheating. And the solution, the only way to put the brakes onto that death spiral and actually crawl back out of the hole, is to cool the planet through a massive dose of SRM, solar radiation management. The deployment of millions of square miles of mirrors to reflect a really significant portion of the sunlight that's coming in back into space, so that it doesn't even play in the overheating of the planet in the first place. Right?
Which leads me to think about making mirror solar panels. Doesn't that sound about right?
Well,
like solar panels that can receive the heat, but that also mirror the sun.
Yeah, you don't really want to combine those two, because solar panels that generate electricity need to absorb that visible spectrum light in order to generate that electricity. But you are moving in the right direction, and let me tell you why. Because one of the areas where it may make sense to deploy massive amounts of mirrors would be reflective thin film canopies in the desert. And the cool thing there is, as it's reflecting the sunlight back up out into space, if even a tiny percentage of that is captured for what's called solar thermal power generation, then we could generate electricity from that. Anyway, there's different advantages and disadvantages to different solutions, but the two that are most urgent in my book are way up in the Arctic and involve the deployment of literally silica spheres of different sizes, from very fine powder that you can just barely see one of them with your eye. You can see it, but you kind of have to squint. It's so fine, these tiny little spheres of a silica, which is sand, right? We need to dust vast portions of the Arctic ice and Greenland ice with that to increase its reflectivity, so that less sunlight gets absorbed, more gets reflected, as well as a thermal barrier. And then another one is spheres that are much greater, more like the size of ping pong balls, that are hollow, but also made of the same material, this very bright white silica. to deploy in the Arctic Ocean, surrounding the Arctic, contained by massive deployments of oil booms to contain the spread so that we keep them exactly where we want them. And those will have, both of those will have immediate impact in terms of reflecting sunlight back into space and cooling the Arctic, which will also, this gets right back to your comment from a few minutes ago, Jasmine, will therefore prevent more methane from being released. And we may actually be able to use this symbiotically with a way of methane capture, but we'd have to figure that out. Anyway, these are...
Can I help? I have an idea about figuring it out. Is for all of the grow houses to put mirrors on all the grow houses.
What, you mean like greenhouses?
Yeah, like all the cannabis greenhouses that are like lining, just put mirrors on all of the greenhouses.
Yeah, here's the thing. Even if you put mirrors on top of every single roof of every single structure on Earth, that would be only a small percentage of the total surface area that we need to make reflective. The big guns are going to be in the ocean. So I've been working with Dr. Yates Howe at Harvard University, who leads a team that's researching how to do massive deployments of floating mirrors in the ocean, to reflect sunlight back into space. I've also been in communication with another. But anyway, the bottom line is we need these mega installations, right, of mirrors, whether on oceans, on the surface of deserts. We definitely want to do what we can with the surfaces of roofs of buildings, but greenhouses, just like solar panels, they actually need for the sunlight to come in. They don't want to reflect it away. So that would be an example of yeah.
Another thing about methane is cattle a major contributor to methane gas. So cattle is a problem.
Absolutely, cattle is a major contributor. And so as we go plant-based diet, starting with the universal stew, which will be 100% plant-based, we then clamp way down on methane emissions from livestock. And welcome, Diana. How you doing, Diana? Great to see you. All righty. In my case, I've been at it for over 9 hours, and the biggest break we had, I think, was 12 minutes. So it's been quite a long haul. I would be very happy to pass the hosting to anyone who wants to take it up. But first, let me just see if there's any final rounds of comments, and, let's take our time, because this is just such a powerful conversation. One comment from me, and we can take a few minutes. Let's put a nice wrap to this, at least this segment. But the press conference that we're going to do is going to blow everyone's mind, just like that press conference we did back in 2013 with President Fox. So hard hitting. We just went straight at the jugular of prohibition and said, look, you're causing us to lose tens of thousands of kids to murder, to violence. And, we just talk about the millions who are dying of starvation and the tens of millions who are dying of other, hunger-caused early deaths. And it's just horrific what we've been sitting back and letting happen to our brothers and sisters. So this all ends very, very soon. And the key inflection point is going to be the public press conference in Tempe, Arizona. Coming soon. And that's just going to be all over the news. The world is hungry for some good news. It's been all bad news, let's face it. And it's been horrifically bad news, right? It's time for some good news, and this is great news. And then as you dig deeper into the story, you find out about, remember, save, heal, transform, the transformational stuff that's happening right here and in the network of conversations, right? That's empowering us to implement the universal stew, end world hunger. and do solar radiation management to cool the planet. So those are the big three, real simple. Yes, Heather, go for it.
Yeah, thank you everybody for everything that's been contributed today. My mind is blown, and I thought I was aware, but I was not aware of like all these wonderful things going on. And when you were explaining were you calling them canopies over the desert, I felt like, and I work with plant medicine, so I hope this is okay to share, but I felt like I just like microdosed some psilocybin, because like the images I was getting was just like this next level consciousness. So I really do feel that we are moving together into this consciousness awakening, and it's happening right now with all of us today. So I'm feeling very inspired, and just thank you all for helping to create this container.
I have a kind of a funny little thing to share, and the significance just dawned on me. I couldn't figure out for, maybe the last few weeks, I've been having Hungry Hungry Hippo come up in my dream time. I'm like, what in the world is this about? So, the universe has a sense of humor, so I just thought I'd share that.
Awesome. Awesome.
The hippo is definitely hungry.
Yep. And this is so imminent. Diana, great to see you. How you doing? We're a little over 9 hours in to the Tuesday Solution Club meets the conversation. So it's been really incredible.
Awesome. Can you give me like a quick hypnosis of what the Solution Club, and then what's been the subject today?
Yeah, sure. Why don't I just start a new recording? I think that'd be good, because then we can have like a short compressed version. And you can hit us with questions and we can all just join in. Does that sound good, everybody? All right. So new recording starting in 3,